Good noon to everyone. On behalf of Department of Philosophy, Pattamundai College, I, Dr. Manoranjan Mallick, lecturer in English, Pattamundai College, request I welcome all of you to the national webinar on Absolutism versus Relativism. So among us, we have all the participants. This is our resource person, Dr. Manoranjan Mallick, sir. Due to some technical problem, our honorable principal sir could not join this webinar. On behalf of him, Dr. Arvind Pandav, head of the Department of Mathematics, will be chairing this session. So now I would request Dr. Arvind Pandav sir, head of the Department of Mathematics, to welcome our resource person. Sir.
Manas sir screen ta off करंतु sir कहिबे sir बसचंदी कहिया पई आपन screen off कर दियंतु से जे अछंती जे आपन resource person तांको screen off करिवे.
Okay sir, ठीक है sir.
Sir कहिबे sir बसचंदी. Sir तांको जगह रे अछंती कहिबे.
Okay sir.
उन्नै sir को दो.
Okay sir. So there is a good news for us. Our principal sir is already on live. He is joining soon. So now I may request our honorable principal, Professor Prabhakar Raut sir, to welcome our resource person and all the participants to this national webinar. Please, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I welcome a resource person who has spared the valuable time to be associated with this program. I also extend my congratulations and thanks to the Department of Philosophy for organizing this webinar. Indian philosophy is a vast field of knowledge. It may be our Vedas, texts like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita and other religious scriptures. All are vast storehouses of knowledge. They reflect mainly on life after death, how to lead a life devoted to truth and seek God. The relevance of human life, but all are discussed in Indian philosophy, which is unparalleled in the world. Our philosophy has guided the world through all the ages, and it is praised, accepted all over the world. As the head of the institution, I officially declare this webinar open and once again thank all the people who have spared the trouble to make it successful. Thank you all.
Now it's over to Dr. Manas Kumar Naik.
सर आपकी माइक बंद है.
Now it's over to Dr. Manas Kumar Naik.
सर आप अनम्यूट करें, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Just a minute. I think there's some technical problem. I will solve it.
Manoj sir, I am audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, sir, take the problem.
क्या आवाज आ रही है?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. A great thanks to our principal, Professor Prabhakar Rao, sir, for his short welcome address. Thank you, sir, for your encouragement, inspiration for us, for which we are able to organize this type of national webinar for our students. And through this webinar, not only our students across the country, they are being helped by our webinars. They are motivated. They get knowledge. We are not only live streaming. We are not only organizing this webinar through Zoom. Our webinar is already live on YouTube. So many students from across the country, they are watching this webinar. So thank you, sir, your for your regular support and help. Now, I would like to request Mr. Simon Kumar Jana, Head of Department of Philosophy, Pattamundai, I invite him to introduce our resource person to our participants, as well as I also invite him to give a small introduction about the topic. Sir, please, sir.
Thank you, Manoj sir. Good morning, everybody. I would like to introduce our esteemed President, the chairperson of today's webinar, Professor Prabhakar Rao sir. And I would like to introduce our honorable resource person, Dr. Manoranjan Mallick, Assistant Professor, Vani, Bihar. Dr. Manoranjan Mallick is presently working as Assistant Professor in the Postgraduate Department of Philosophy, Utkal University, Bhubaneswar. He has completed his PhD in Philosophy from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Bombay, India in 2012. The title of his PhD thesis is Wittgenstein Notion of Ethics, a Therapeutic Understanding. He has completed his MPhil on Wittgenstein from Rani Durgavati University, Jabalpur, MP, and Master from Ravenshaw College, Kotak in 2001. His area of interest lies in philosophy of language in general and Wittgenstein in particular. Dr. Mallick has published more than 15 number of research articles in the reputed national and international journals and anthologies. Among these, one famous article titled Privacy of a Moral Perspective has been published in Journal of the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, Springer. He has visited the Department of History and Philosophy at the University of Texas Pan American, Edberg, Texas, USA, for attending the Society for Student Philosophers annual conference in 2009. He was awarded for the General Philosophy and Junior Research Philosophy by the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, Ministry of Education, New Delhi in the year 2006 and 2015. He has presented more than 20 research papers at both national and international conferences and seminars. He has supervised 5 MPhil students and 2 PhD scholars are working under his guidance. So, apart from this, he is an academic member of the Athens Institute for Education and Research, Athens, Greece. He is a lifetime member of Wittgenstein Philosophical Society, India. He is a joint secretary of All Odisha Philosophical Association, OPA, Odisha. He is an expert member of the Ethical Committee, Institute of Medical Sciences, IMS, and some hospital. He is a member of the Board of Studies, Department of Philosophy, Noyagarh, Autonomous College, Noyagarh. Presently, he is the coordinator of the PG Department of Philosophy, Utkal University. So, in very shortcut, I would like to say in my point of view something about today's title, that is Absolutism versus Relativism. Absolutism versus relativism, these are two very popular philosophical debates under ethics, the study of morality. Absolutism holds that the standards are always true. On the other hand, relativism considers the context of situations. Hence, absolutism suggests, or absolutism is the moral value of in all the segments. Hence, absolutism considers the context of the situations and endorse equality, while relativism advocates equity. That's all. Thank you all. And I also request all the participants to enjoy today's webinar from beginning to end. Thank you all.
Thank you, Simon sir, for introducing our resource person to our participants, as well as you have given a short introduction on the topic. Now, I would like to request our resource person, Dr. Manoranjan Mallick sir, Assistant Professor in Philosophy, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Utkal University, Vani, Bihar, Odisha. Sir, now you can share a screen and you can deliver your topic.
Sir, is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You are audible.
Sir, I want to share my screen, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Share, sir. You can share, sir.
Okay,
Sir.
Sir, is it visible?
It is clear, sir.
Is it visible, sir? Okay, sir.
Sir, it is visible.
Okay, sir. समस्तों को मोर नमस्कार. Thank you very much, Mr. Srimant Kumar Jena, for nicely introducing me in this webinar. Very good afternoon to one and all present over in this webinar. Esteemed Principal, Pattamundai College, Professor Prabhakar Raut, respected Convener, Mr. Srimant Kumar Jena, HOD, Department of Philosophy, Pattamundai College, Co-Convener, Mrs. R.N. Madhusmita Parida, Faculty, Philosophy Department, and IQ SE Coordinator, Dr. Sunil Kumar Pradhan, Pattamundai College, Pattamundai. Distinguished invitees, professors, scholars, students, and ladies and gentlemen, and also our technical teams. At the outset, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the principal of the Pattamundai College and also to the HOD Department of Philosophy, Pattamundai College, for giving me an opportunity to share my views in this webinar, to this August gathering, or to the great scholars. I feel very honored and privileged to deliver on this topic, that is absolutism and relativism, in this webinar. As you know that COVID-19 pandemic has been affecting us socially, politically, and also very much affecting our academic parts in the entire globe. However, we are still continuing to prevail our academic activities through this blended mode. I don't know how far this talk will be helpful in enriching your ideas about the absolutism and relativism. So once again, I thank you very much to the principal, HOD, and all the technical teams for inviting me to this webinar. This webinar is not like a lecture. It is kind of discussion and interaction among us. So whenever and wherever, when somebody wants to interrupt me, then he or she is free to ask or to interrupt any questions in between or during my lectures. So I will come to the title of my presentation is, that is Absolutism versus Relativism. The entire presentation is divided into 4 parts. One is introduction, second one is absolutism, third one is relativism, and final is conclusion. Sir, is it audible? Sir, some voice is coming. So I
unmuted them. I muted them.
So ethics, basically, ethics is a branch of philosophy which deals with the human values. And my entire presentation is based on only ethics. So I will be talking from the ethical perspective, not from the metaphysical perspective, epistemology and teleological perspective. I am talking from the only ethical perspective. So absolutism and relativism, when you talk about absolutism and relativism and talking about the human values, so the question is that whether the human values are absolute in nature and relative in nature. So this is a very much debatable issue in ethics. And this debate is also still continent in epic of the Mahabharata. So whether the values, or when you say that good or truth, are really good is absolute nature and relative in nature. So this is very much debatable issue, and I will try to sort out, and what I have claimed in this paper, that is the values are really absolute in nature. When it comes to the practice, it is relative in nature. So some may disagree with this with my point. So we'll discuss in later, means after my presentation. So ethics is a standard of moral practice, and it is the study of morality, because due to the ethics, we evaluate whether action is said to be right or wrong. Right. So therefore, ethics is very much related to the human action. So ethics refers to a specific area of study, that is area of morality. Ethics concentrate on human conduct and human values. Overall, ethics is divided into the 3 parts. One is metaethics, second is normative ethics, and third one is applied ethics. So metaethics or analytic ethics, it is the study of what ethical terms and theories actually refer to, and what does right means, and how can you analyze the term good and bad, and etc. So basically, metaethics gives emphasis on the analysis of the term good, right, and wrong. Second one is the normative or prescriptive ethics. It is the study of ethical theories that prescribe how people ought to act, or how one should act in everyday life. So normative ethics says that ethics is a prescriptive in terms of the moral laws and moral principle. Third one is the applied ethics. It is the study of the use of the ethical values, or it is the application of ethical values in everyday life. It attempts to apply ethical theories to real life situation. It is the application of ethical theory into the real life situation. Then I will come to the third slide. That is what is absolutism. So ethical absolutism holds that moral commands are always true at all times, at all situations, at all purviews. So they are true in all cultures, in all society and all situations. It is perennial and it is everlasting. So it cannot be changed in the changes of the situation. It is perennial. Under this purview, actions such as murder and stealing are seen as objectively wrong, regardless of their circumstance or consequence. That is to say, murder is always wrong, whether you like it or dislike it, whatever the consequence may be, but murder and stealing is always wrong. So one has to accept, one has to follow the principle. Absolute moral theories are deontological as they don't consider consequence. For example, Kant's categorical imperative. Kant's categorical imperative is a universal ethical principle stating that one should always respect the humanity in others, that one should only act in accordance with the rules that could hold for everyone. There are some rules, there are some principles which are universal, which are fixed. So every human being has to follow, has to obey that principle, whatever the consequence may be. So the consequence of the result is not important. Our important is the duty, our duty for the duty sake. So Kant's ethics is called deontological. The word deontology comes from the Greek words deon for duty or logos for science. It is the deontology. It is deology means it is science. It is theory of duty. A deontological theories of ethics stresses a person's duty to do the morally correct things regardless of consequence. One has to do your duty. One should not bother about the whatever the consequence may come out from the action. Our duty is to do action, not desiring not looking the consequence. Morality can be summed up in one ultimate commandment of reason from which all duties and obligations deduce or sprout. So Kant has given the emphasis on the reason. Since we have a reason, human beings have a reason. So that's why we know what is good and what is bad. Animals are not morally interesting or concerning because they are not rationally thinking creatures. Only human beings are rationally thinking creatures. Kant recognizes the rationality of human beings. So that's why human beings have two qualities. One is rationality, another is animality. Humans are rational in having a conception of laws and principles. Our rationality enables us to understand the correctness of moral laws, such as keep our promises, keep your promises. Stealing is wrong. So these are the moral principles. So one has to obey this moral principle and to know the difference between what is right and wrong, because we have the reason. So reason controls our appetites, reason controls our desire. So the moral person acts according to the reason to do the right thing in spite of the influence of their desires and appetites. Knowing how to act ethically or morally requires a reason. So moral laws are necessarily objective and absolute. Reason is not a subjective, it is an objective. They are commandant of reason that apply only unconditionally. The moral commands, the moral principle are unconditionally applied to all the situation, whatever is the Kant said. It is the fundamental principle of moral reason that is known as the categorical imperative. Categorical imperative is the internal law of conscience, or practical reason is the moral standard. As you remember that Gandhi said that what is truth? Gandhi said that truth is, first he said that truth is God and God is truth. But later on he has changed the view. The truth is the inner conscience. So inner conscience is the reason, what he has pointed out. The Kant has pointed out same thing, that is the reason. So since we have an inner conscience, so that's why you know that what is right and what is wrong. So more categorical means unconditional. Imperative means command. So moral commands are unconditional. They are not conditioned by the situation. So an imperative is a command that I act in certain fashion unconditionally. Moral laws or principle are commands of reason. So reason guides the moral principle, what is right and wrong. It is only guided by our reason. So kinds of imperative is, there are two kinds of imperative. One is hypothetical imperative, another is categorical imperative. Hypothetical imperative concerns an action which is good only as a means to something else. Means hypothetical imperative is based on that some condition. The moral commands are based on the some condition. So that's why something is good because it is achieved something. That's why it is good. There is some means, but categorical imperative, there is no means, only end. So categorical imperative concerned an action which is conceived of as good in itself, not good as a means something. It is a good in itself. Hypothetical imperatives tells us how to act in order to achieve a specific goal. For example, I must study to get a degree. I study because I want to get a job. So that's why my study depends upon some kind of the means, some kind of that, some kind of desire, because I desire to study because I want to get a job. So therefore it is a conditional. But categorical imperative, there is no condition. You study, or you want to study because it is a study for the study sake, a duty for the duty sake, not some condition is not required. The condition is not something is required. So an action which is good only as a means to achieve something else. So it is a hypothetical imperative. Action needs to be done in order to achieve an objective or to attain an objective. So for hypothetical imperative, object is something. Our object or aim is something, to do something. So it is a subjective and conditional. But categorical imperative is not subjective, it is objective and conditional. The categorical imperatives are ones which tell you to do something, no matter who you are and what you want, because think is good in itself. An action is good for the sake of good. It is not good because it is done as a means to achieve something else. So action is good because it is good in itself with a reference to any consequence of the action. So therefore some philosophers and some researchers, they have compared the Kantian notion of categorical imperative deontology with the niskame karma in Indian philosophy, because duty for the duty sake. One should do an action without desiring the consequence. So categorical imperative that if something is to be good for me, then it is applicable as good for all human beings. That is to say, if something is good for me, it is also good for all human beings. All rational beings have come up with the same conclusion. So they are subject to the same universal moral laws which are common to all. The all moral principles are common to all. Nobody has denied the moral principle, and nobody should not avoid the moral principle because it is common to all. So they should act under a system of moral principle. It is an ethical code of conduct which is applicable to everybody. So honesty is the best policy. For example, honesty is the best policy. To be truthful in all declaration is therefore a sacred unconditional command of reason. We should follow the honesty is the best policy. If somebody asks that, why should I be honest? So this is a nonsensical question, or this is not a the questions in ethics. We should not ask the question why you should follow the honesty and the punctuality and the sincerity. Being a human being is, since you are a rational being, since we have a reason, so we should follow the moral commands that honesty is the best policy, or one should be honest. So Kant's categorical imperative is objectively necessary. It applies to all persons and it is common to all mankind. So now I will come to the relativism, which in contrast to absolutism, that moral relativism views moral values are entirely relative to different society and context. Moral relativism, or moral, according to relativism, moral values are relative in nature. It changes from context to context, changes from the person to person. It also changes from the society to society. It depends on, it is a context dependent. Therefore, whether an action is right can depend on the context in which it takes place. So relativist moral theories may consider the consequences of moral action when deciding if they are right and wrong. For example, the classical utilitarianism, that is that for them that something is said to be good and something is said to be right. It depends upon the context, depends upon our desire, depends upon the result. So Bentham advocates the principle of maximum pleasure for the greatest number. For example, an action is said to be right if it produces the maximum pleasure for the greatest number. So therefore, Bentham principle is based on the quantitative method. He believes that quantity is the method through which one can choose that what is good and what is bad, but what is right, what is good. And J.S. Mill advocates that action is said to be right if it produces excess pleasure and over pain, and if it satisfies our desire excessively. So that's why Mills gives emphasis upon the qualitative method. He said the quality is the best method through which one can say that action is said to be right or wrong. So absolute value is essentially valuable for its own sake. In this slide that I have made certain distinction between the absolute value and relative values. When you talk about the absolute values are essentially valuable for its own sake. That is unconditional. It is good, something is good because it is good for its good in itself, not something else. Absolute values are eternal, non-conditional, non-factual, and remains unchanged in different contexts. Relative values are instrumental, context dependent, and that is unconditional. In relative sense, something is said to be good only it serves towards some purpose and some ends. For example, when you say that the chair is good, this is a good chair, that means it satisfies our desire because the chair has a good cushion. What is the unbridgeable? Sir, is it audible? Sir, there is some problems in internet. I found some problems, sir. Sir, is it? Hello?
Yes, sir, audible, sir.
Okay. So there is some problems I have found. So now it is solved, I think. So, sir, my screen is visible, madam?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Clearly visible, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the internet problems. So, so relative values is, as I said, the relative values is instrumental and context dependent. That is conditional. And so distinction between a judgment of relative value and judgment of absolute value. So when you make a judgment about the absolute value and when you make a judgment about the relative values, so they are distinct to each other. So first one is the relative values, that playing well, and second one is judgment of absolute value, that is the behaving well. So next slide, I will clarify the what are the relative values and what are the absolute values. So suppose that I could play 10. Is it visible? Again disconnected, now connected. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. The example is first example is about the relative values. What I'm saying, that suppose I play badminton, I play tennis, and somebody observes my game and says that, see that you are playing tennis very badly. So I may answer it, or I answer it. I know I play the tennis badly, but I don't want to be a good player. Then the other person would say that, yes, that is all right. He may not give any kind of negative answer. He said that, okay, don't worry, then you continue. Then it is all right. But again, but suppose someone said that you are behaving like a beast, your behavior is so bad, then I don't want to behave. Then if I say that I don't want to behave any better, if I say that if I reply that I don't want to behave any better, or I don't want to be a good human being, then other person could not say that. Other person may not reply that, yes, that is all right. Certainly not. He could say that, well, you ought to want to behave better. Here, because why? Now here you have an absolute judgment of value, whereas the first instant was in relative values. Because the example that I play tennis, that is the relative value, and second one that I am behaving very badly, or I am behaving like a beast. Is it audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the relative value judgment, when you say that playing tennis or playing good depends upon my depends upon my desire. It depends upon my condition. Suppose if I want to be a good player, then I should play tennis well. But if I don't want to be a good player, then I don't play. Why should I play that well? So it is not necessary for all. It is not conditional. So one may even play just for, if somebody asks that why you are playing tennis, no, I just come for playing to keep my health fit or for the relaxation. So others would not object it. If one is not interested to play any better, it becomes an instance for a relative judgment value. So playing tennis is a relative value judgment because it depends upon the one desire, it depends upon the one likingness. But second one, behaving badly cannot be counted as a moral choice. There is no choice. First one, relative sense, there is a choice. It depends upon the player. Suppose a player wants to be a good player, then he wants to play. Suppose a player does not want to be a good player, then he doesn't play well. So he just come for playing just to keep his health fit. But later on, the behaving badly cannot be counted as a moral choice. There is no moral choice because it is unconditional. If somebody answer that, why should I behave well? Then it gives certain kind of problems, because behaving well, it is a rational, because it is rational way of the human. It is a rational choice. One should behave well. It is a, because since we are the rational beings, so one should behave well. So behaving badly cannot be counted as a moral choice. Behaving badly would be incorrect and morally unacceptable in all possible contexts. So there is no condition. If somebody asks the question that why should I behave well, or why should want to be a good human being, so this type of question is called nonsensical questions, because every human being should behave well. So this is a rational way of living of human beings. To behave better or to behave well is a rational way of living for human beings, which is unconditional. So nobody can refute the logical necessity of such ethical judgments. It is a case of absolute judgment of values. So playing tennis better is a conditional, as one has a choice whether to go for and or not. So playing tennis is a kind of a based on the condition, based on the choice. It depends upon the agent inclination, agent likingness, and does not create any kind of moral dilemma in any case, because it is a conditional. Others would find it all right if one says he or he doesn't want to play any better, you may not necessarily say that you ought to want to play better. If somebody replies that no, I don't want to be a good player, then others man replies that okay, it is all right. But if somebody replies that no, I don't want to be a good human being, or I don't want to behave well, then others man replies that no, you should not be. You ought to want to play better, because there is no moral choice. Since you are a rational human being, since you have a reason, so this is a rational way of living of all human beings to behave well. But in the absolute context, in ethical context, not behaving well cannot be accepted as an exercise of choice. Others would find it morally unacceptable if one says, I know I behave badly, but then I don't want to behave any better. In ethical context, in absolute context, it is unconditionally accepted that one ought to want to behave better. So no possible justification can be given if asked why one ought to behave better. So this is precisely because it is unconditional value which each and every man ought to follow. No logical or causal reasons can be offered for it. There is a moral necessity that everyone ought to behave well. This justification comes to an end in such a case, because we cannot give any kind of sufficient or necessary justification. We cannot give any kind of justification that why should I follow the moral principle, or why should I behave better, or why should be I honest. We should not give any kind of moral justification. Since you are human being, since you are rational being, so our duty is to behave well. So no justification is acceptable. But justification is required, or justification can be acceptable if somebody asks that no, I don't want to be a good player, then their justification is acceptable. But in the latter case, in absolute context, in absolute value context, no justification acceptable. Is it right? Okay. Is it audible or is it understood?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay. So contrary to it, justification can be offered if asked why one should play better and also for not doing so. Such justification would be entirely based on certain facts related with the person's interest, inclination. That's why what I said, that when you give any the judgment about the relative values, or when you give the relative value judgment, the relative value judgment is always based on the agent's inclination, interest, and likingness, whereas absolute value judgments do not based on the person interest in inclination. Their absolute value judgment are quite independent to persons to agents interest and inclination. In ethical context, person test, choice, inclination, and interest do not play any role in reaching the judgment. Ethical context means when you talk about the absolute value judgment. So values are called absolute only when they don't lose their significance, even if they go against one's need, desire, text, inclination, etc. What I'm saying is that honesty is the best policy, or killing is the wrong, but it is absolute. But when it comes to the practice, in some context, killing is acceptable and killing is unavoidable. But there somebody kills, suppose a person kills the terrorist, there killing is acceptable, killing is unavoidable. But what case can you say that this kind of relative values that goes against the absolute values, or this kind of relative values loses the significance of the absolute value? No, the absolute values has its significance. Of course, when it comes to the practice, there are some kind of contradiction arises, but that doesn't mean that the absolute values loses its significance when it comes to the practice in a relative nature. So any attempt to so that's what I'm saying, that absolute value and relative values are quite different. So absolute value has a moral force which compels us for certain action in a given situation, independent of likingness or dislikingness. It has a coercive power. So absolute value has a coercive power. For example, I'm giving the example, the very beautiful example, that feeling guilty for not being able to help a needy person. Sorry, feeling guilty for not being able to help the needy person cannot be compared with feeling guilty for not being able to pass the SSB exam. See, the difference is that, see, the feeling guilty for not being able to help a needy person cannot be compared. The first sentence, feeling guilty, not being able to help a needy person, it is absolute sense. And not being able to pass the SSB exam, it is a relative sentence. Because in fact, it may not be appropriate even to talk about guilty in an examination, because the feeling guilty and not being able to pass in the SSB examination, it cannot be ethical, it cannot be absolute statement, because you may get a lectureship in a university, then you will be happy. But not being able to help the needy person, not being, because since you are rational being, one should help the needy person. It is a rational duty. If you don't do, then one should feel the kind of coercive force, one should feel guilty. So that guilty and this guilty, the absolute sense in the guilty and relative sense are guilty are very much different. So because the absolute sense, there is a coercive force, and the relative sense, there is no coercive force. So, so in other words, if better learning is taken to an absolute good, it would be absurd to accept that all those who have passed in the examination have learned. So what I'm saying, that absolute guilty has some kind of the coercive force, and the relative sense, when you use the guilty, that is, there is no coercive force. So now I will come to the conclusion that the expression value and fact is a contradiction in the terms, because values are absolute, facts are relative. But in some cases, values are also absolute, but when it comes to the practice, then it is a relative. So ought cannot be derived from the fact. Fact and ought are different. Values and fact are different. So ethical values are absolute in general and relative in practices. So man is an end in himself. He ought not to be treated as a means, as an account. So with this word, I just want to that give an example that from the epic of the Mahabharata, that Krishna said to Arjuna, see, the values are always absolute. So Arjuna was in dilemma in Mahabharata and Kurukshetra, that what should I do? What is really true? What is really good, and what is righteous action? Then Krishna Krishna said to Arjuna that see, that truth is always absolute. But when it comes to the practice, they are relative. So the promises, the breaking the promises to make the promise is absolute. But how to use that promises and how to break that promises, it depends upon the context. So that's why Krishna was very annoyed. Krishna was very annoyed on the Bhishma, and also very annoyed to Dronacharya, and very annoyed to the Karna, because they are because in Mahabharata the Bhishma was completely that opposed with the promises. Is that he made a vow that I will not break my promises. So because it is a promises are absolutely true. But Krishna said in Arjuna, no, there are some situations the promises can be the broken. It depends upon the context. So when the Arjuna was very much reluctant to fight against the guru and fight against the fellow feelings, fight against the brothers, then Krishna said that no, so you should of course killing is wrong, but you should kill the person. You should kill your fellow feeling. You should kill the brothers because they are the support of the injustice. So to uphold the justice, to maintain the equality in the society, if somebody wants to kill some others, then that is also morally acceptable. So thank you very much. So once again, I thank you. I express my the sincere thanks to the host, to the principal of the Pattamundai College and HOD, and also all the that learned persons and delegates and scholars, students and professors for having the patience listening. So thank you. So if you have any question, so you can free to ask the question. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for a very informative and scholarly presentation. I know that students will be benefited from your presentation. It will also help to inculcate a humanitarian attitude and ethics in their mind in future. So now this session is open for the question and answer discussion. All the participants are asked if they have any doubt, they can ask they can ask questions and queries to our resource person. He is online. Sir, actually I don't see any questions in your chat box. Or
sir,
yes,
both Odia and English. जदि कहीं कौन सी पिला जदि पांचवे कौन स्टूडेंट ओडिया रे चाहथिबे पचरिया पई, then we will also
okay. So I see the Prashant Kumar Behra, he wants to ask question. Prashant, you can ask question. From odia ri pachari paro. Prashant. Nice, Prashant nine. So the hath take it. But no, sir, that's not any question, sir. I don't see any question in the chat box, nor anyone is and anyone is not asking any question. So now I would like to request our Mr. Ranjan Kumar Gahana, sir, lecturer in chemistry, to propose a vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Good afternoon, all of you. Today, the Department of Philosophy of Pattamundai College organized nice national webinar on the topics of absolutism versus relativism. The last part of the webinar, vote of thanks, which one is provided to me. It is a pleasure to me to give a vote of thanks of such a personality. Honorable Principal cum President of webinar, Professor Prabhakat Rao sir, Extreme research person Dr. Manoranjan Mallick sir, Assistant Professor, Utkal University, Vani, Bihar. Respected and my dear friends, Head of the Department of Philosophy, Professor Simant Kumar Jina sir. Respected Dr. Sunil Kumar Pradhan, as Head of the ICAC Committee, and my dear Dr. Manas Kumar Naik, that is ICAC member and faculty member of English, and dear RM Madhu Mista Farida, the another faculty member of philosophy, and dear Pradumna Pradhan, the faculty member of economics, and my dear students. The today Department of Philosophy will be nicely organized. Yes, such a topics is very nicely taught by that of Dr. Mallick sir, which one is very much effective and appreciated our students, and I think it is very much useful in their age. And come to the points which I would like to give a vote of thanks first, Honorable Principal sir, as a chairperson of this webinar, not only supported mentally but also financially, and to speak any times how it is essential for that of institutions and our students. Many thanks, sir. I also needs for that of supports in the next times. Once again, thanks. And now I would like to give a thanks to Dr. Mallick's. I have no words for thanking sir. Is what extent as it is very less one. Is nicely presentations, his topics, absolutism versus the relativism. Though I am belong to that of science, still then I'm related to that of philosophy, as it is some argumental topics. Many thanks as nicely presentations your topics. Once again, sir, I also need for that of your supports on future if we are just organize such a type of webinars. Once again, many thanks, sir. Next, I go to that of thanks. Dr. Sunil Pradhan sir, as a ICAC head of the ICAC, who supported to how to organize the webinar to our college, in particularly philosophy departments, and to many times to be supervised how this webinar will be successfully organized. And next, I'll go to that of Professor Simant Kumar Jina sir, at the head of the philosophy, my dear friends. It is take a very painful steps as though it is related to that of your now the university exam now going on, and still then after that you will also spend a much more of times how will be organized, and in front of mine will be just contact to that of Dr. Mallick sir, and many thanks Mr. Jena. And next I would like to be thanks to Dr. Manas Kumar Naik as a cooperating and host this webinar successfully. Many thanks, Dr. Manas. And also thanks RN Madhumita, though now it will maternal leave and supported to that of cordially how to successfully organize the webinar in your departments. Now I would like to thanks Pradumna Pradhan and Subhasis Mishra also join with us and encourage us how to successfully organize this webinar. And lastly, I would like to give thanks to that of a different faculty member and learning persons of a different college and university, and also give the thanks to our dear friends also, and also our students who are joined after completions of their degree exam, and give some support and to successfully encouraging and very much effective. Also, many thanks our students, and thanks all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ranjan sir, for your vote of thanks. Now I request, actually मैं ओडिया कह सब पार्टिसिपेंट मान कह समेत भिडियो ऑन करंतु जहाँ द्वारा आम स्क्रीनशॉट नहीं पारिबु हमर फ्यूचर रेफरेंस पाई तो प्रत्येक पार्टिसिपेंट स्टूडेंट्स माने जो मान सब लाइन ऑनलाइन अछंती म तांको होची से वीडियो टाको ऑन करे लगी सर ठीक है सर अनम्यूट होइन सर Once again, I thank Dr. Manoranjan Mallick sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Philosophy, Utkal University, Odisha, sir, for the beautiful presentation. With taking due permission for our chairperson, I declare this webinar is over. Now, all of us can leave this session. Webinar.
Sir, thank you very much for inviting me, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello. Sir, any attendance link? Hello.